There are 8 cognitive functions, 4 rational and 4 irrational. Every individual has all 8, and balanced individuals know how to balance their relationships with the various functions in a harmonious way. The irrational functions are the ones that address the inevitable life experiences. Unfortunately, potential and sentience can't be explained. There are various experiences such as gut feelings, your consciousness, and aesthetics, which have an importance that cannot be put into words. It has to be understood through the other faculties that we have, the ones that do not require language. These faculties are the faculty of sensation, which is the body communicating itself, and the faculty of intuition, which is either psychic or subconscious. Everyone relies on both of these faculties and heavily on the last one. We don't exist for papers or timesheets. We exist to explore, to breed, and to eat good food. Humans live for the experience and because life feels like a gift, not because we understand that it's our responsibility. This experience is an irrational one, but an insanely profound one, and one that is central to the identity of most people. There are few people who have never had a spiritual experience in their life. It is not important if there are spirits or a deity, but that throughout history and today, people still feel like they are in communion with something higher than themselves. That has gone on before language, and it won't stop until the species does. There will always be believers, and we will always have sensation. Sensation and intuition both have an introverted and extroverted form. This is true of all the functions. While some functions might deal with the same dimension, the introverted and extroverted iterations of those functions often couldn't be more different. This is why it's misleading to group archetypes based on the middle 2 letters in their shorthand. Introverted sensation is the function which drives nostalgia. This isn't commercial nostalgia either. There's no aesthetic to it. There's just an honest attachment to the past and a great memory for it. Emotions and scenes live on in introverted sensation, providing both pleasant memories and a wealth of information to rely on during decision-making. It is the function through which the individual stores and preserves memories. It has a unique position as the tertiary function, as it is one of the functions ablessed to lead to a loop. This is especially true for both INTPs and INFPs, as if they do not develop their extroverted intuition, then they will be prone to over-relying on introverted sensation. This will leave them chewing over the same information that they have already gathered obsessively with their primary introverted rational functions. It keeps them sentimental, stubborn, and unable to motivate themselves while they need to be exposing themselves to new ideas. However, just as much as it can serve as fuel for self-destruction, it can also be an incredible, if not explosive, source of motivation for the healthy INXP types. When introverted sensation is given too much responsibility, then it leads to nostalgia and cyclical thinking. If it is relieved by other functions such as extroverted intuition, then it can prove instead to be a source of health, inspiration, and meaning. Unhealthy INXP types try to force introverted sensation to contain all of the knowledge of the world within itself. This means that they will dig at their own experience for general understanding when that's not what introverted sensation can supply. That's the burden that extroverted intuition carries. Without that burden and with self-worth, then introverted sensation serves as the function that defines home, taste, and comfort. It allows INXPs to build the things that they want to build and to feel like they are gaining in their ever-expanding rational understanding of the universe around them. Within introverted sensation is the self. If you thought about how you prepared your outfit for yourself and how you're sleeping, it is the function of health communicating to the body. ISTJs and ISFJs illustrate this function through their loyalty. their understanding of themselves, and their understanding of their surroundings. They are often people who are slow to talk, but that have a lot to talk about. It is a deep function which has a lot to draw from and is able to provide both comfort and competence. Extraverted sensation is the function of presence, while introverted sensing is about burning incense so that your body relaxes and you feel like you respect yourself more. Extroverted sensation is about the smell of that incense. It is about evaluating things for how they are, how they feel to the touch, and how they act. Due to this, the types with primary or auxiliary extroverted sensation tend to be active individuals. The ISTPs are the engineers. The ISFPs are the artists. Even the introverted archetypes that rely on it keep themselves busy by engaging with the world, by doing things that have a beginning, middle, and end. The ESTPs and the ESFPs are often the most active in a conversation without really having a good grasp on how to present themselves. They're prone to being focused on what's in front of them and struggling to track down things that can't be explained visually or physically. However, to balance this out, they are incredibly physically gifted. Extroverted sensation is driving, it is sports, it is dressing well, and it is everything that makes you aware of having a body and receiving attention. It is the function through which the individual expresses their existence, the declaration of their being through proof of doing. As a primary function, it leads to people who are either smooth or unceasing. Both end up being charming, either through their prowess or through their poise. The archetypes with extroverted sensing as a primary function tend to be relaxed, confident individuals that are quick to be alerted. They know how to relax, literally. They know how to calm themselves down and how to feel good, but they don't know how to be unaware of their surroundings. Whatever information they're receiving with their senses will be processed, and they will be among the first to respond to stimuli. As an inferior function, extroverted sensation is expressed by the opposite manifestation when the archetypes are immature. Young INTJs and INFJs both struggle to figure out how to carry themselves and what they enjoy doing. They often have art that they enjoy, usually appreciating the texture, but aesthetics can be difficult for them. Their approach to aesthetic is usually involved with a heightened sense of taste, so they are attracted to expensive things, even while they're finding their sense of style. This leads them to either overdressing or neglecting their aesthetics as they try to match an idealized aesthetic. Their sense of spacing is also often off. Although they benefit from partaking in and enjoying physical activities such as dance, golf, and other such things, both the INTJs and the INFJs tend to struggle with knowing where to stand around others, how to manipulate space, and how heavy things are. Extroverted sensation is the function which modulates physical understanding through the individual's presence. Introverted intuition, the lead function of INTJs and INFJs, is the opposite of extroverted sensation and is the most difficult function to describe. It works in a way that's deeply personalized and abstract. Often it manifests as a vision, where introverted intuition allows a look into the truth beyond reality. Some feel more in tune with the future while doing this, feeling like they are assessing a vision that is slowly being realized as life progresses. More commonly, this function works as various hunches. An INTJ is excellent at understanding information and working with it due to extroverted thinking. But it is through introverted intuition that the INTJ sorts through that information. Data by itself is meaningless. A dictionary must have words worth forming into sentences for it to have value. For the INTJ, this value is perceived through their intuition, and they can see what's important behind the knowledge in front of them. Often this manifestation by the NITJs believing that they can see God through science or history. Introverted intuition lets them see beyond the data and perceive importance that's not immediately apparent. INFJs work similarly, but using extroverted feelings as their way to assimilate new information. Using their surroundings and the feelings for others, INFJs are able to interpret the key feelings that are manifested around them. Like how the INTJs see God in science. Often the INFJs find gods in the world. They are prone to spiritualizing emotion and seeing that as a deeply motivating force that is the motivation behind reality. This allows them an unexplainable insight into the world around them that runs deep and is a rich source of empathy and consideration. However, when this isn't balancing, the INFJs become lost in their own opinions and they may think over reality. This means that they will insist on their own interpretation of reality instead of listening to the people they are interacting with. When they disagree, they get stubborn and shut down input from the outside world, which sometimes results in them being poor communicators. INTJs suffer from a similar issue if they don't find balance. Without input from others, INTJs are quick to become arrogant and unwilling to validate the right of others to contribute. They can become too obsessed with facts and box out people through the proofs that they have constructed beforehand. The INTJs are the archetype that is the most prone to autism. This may help to reveal the nature of introverted intuition. It is not a perfect function, but it is a fascinating one. It can be the source of great insight, and the function can channel incredible beauty. But it can also be isolating and unwilling to accommodate others. Just as it is a hard function to explain, it's hard to explain things to the function. Introverted intuition is almost like an inside joke between an individual and themselves. It is a wonderfully potent language that can describe inevitable things, but it is a language that can't be voiced. Extraverted intuition is a much easier function to observe because it is essentially the function of imagination. The function reveals the potential in the world around it, leading individuals with it as a primary function to perceive the world more for what it could be than what it is. ENTPs are incredibly prone to be lost in projects, buried under scraps of things that they started and stopped because they don't see life for how they are living. They see the world as an incredible wealth of resources. Their brains are always firing away at new ideas, new ways that things could be applicated, different ways to have conversations, so to be more efficient and observe premises that are sure to get laughs. They constantly process what the things around them could be. ENFPs do something similar but without the practical push behind it. As the ENTPs find themselves in engineering, the ENFPs find themselves teaching art. The expression of extroverted intuition tends to be much more social than the ENTPs. Instead of using extroverted intuition to root through information that introverted thinking can turn into experiments, the ENFP uses extroverted intuition to reveal information about the people around them. They perceive the atmosphere behind environments, the motivations that keep certain individuals going, and other such sensitive details. Often they can appear psychic with their uncanny ability to pick up on the emotions of others around them, despite not having extroverted feeling. This is because the ENFPs have such a powerful connection to the world around them with extroverted intuition that they appear to be on the exact same page as others. For all of the other archetypes that have it as a function, extroverted intuition remains pretty visible. Even ESTJs give off the impression of that function when they're on a roll, as it pairs so easily with the other extroverted functions. Extroverted intuition is one of the most common functions used in communication because it unites archetypes including the INTPs and the ENFPs, the ESTJs, and the ISFJs. Through having this function at all, most individuals in these archetypes find it incredible to follow extroverted intuition and what someone is trying to express with it. It can be understood as a capacity for irrational conversation or understanding what people mean, even though they didn't say it literally. It is a sense for how to get along with the world. The rest of the functions are the rational functions, which have to do with the literal aspects of communication. As extroverted intuition reveals what people mean abstractly, the rational functions are responsible for the concrete illustrations of their intentions. These functions are the functions of feeling and thought, and both works to define truth. Extroverted feeling serves as a powerful function in public. The need to look like others do, to fit in with societal norms, and to have pleasant small talk are all signs of humanity's engagement with the function. It also works as a way to process emotion in general, as some individuals struggle with what our society has referred to as authenticity. Some people don't know how to react to the emotional stimuli in their life, and these tend to be people who rely on extroverted feeling as it through the reaction of their community to certain occurrences that they can gain an understanding of how to react to those stimuli. This works as well as authenticity because the important aspect of dealing with emotions is to deal with them maturely, not with an artistic touch. Finding an understanding of feelings through the people around you is just as valid as coming to an understanding through your relationship with the world around you. Extroverted feelings gives a sense for understanding feeling through a way that is connected with others, which doesn't make it phony but empathetic. ESFJs and ENFJs are archetypes who can often be described as self-forgetting. They find themselves motivated to communicate with others and find it to be important to keep harmony and a willingness to work together. Their fault is in often forgetting to stand up for their own interests or beliefs in the interests of the larger social environment. When they are able to stick by what they think, then they often find it easy to express themselves, as support is easy to find for both ESFJs and ENFJs if they believe in themselves. Their ability to get along with people also serves as an ability to convince others. For the types that rely on extroverted feeling as an auxiliary function, the utility of the function immediately changes. While ENFJs and ESFJs are honestly invested in ambience, harmony, and the emotional health of the settings that they inhabit, INFJs and ISFJs often have different motives. Those types with extroverted feelings as auxiliary function tend to use it as a cover, disguising themselves as agreeable and invested while they really are motivated by their own reasons. Both the INFJs and the ISFJs have introverted thinking as a tertiary function, which can be paired with their primary receiving functions to process information. This means that they are exceptionally capable of receiving and interpreting data, which they can also easily obtain through using extroverted feeling. While they are both feeling types, they may be the most misleadingly labeled as both ISFJs and INFJs can be tremendously cold. Their archetypes with extroverted feeling as their tertiary or inferior function are very revealing. Instead of often making use of it, it mostly shows as a deep need in archetypes such as the INTP, the ENTP, the ISTP, and the ESTP. These archetypes tend to be incredibly self-sufficient, but in terms of productivity, they're obsessively focused on their interests, but neglectful of their personal needs. This allows them to be easily manipulated or nurtured by someone who can supply them with extroverted feelings. When these archetypes do develop extroverted feeling for themselves, they often also do it after getting over disdain for public opinion. The result is a journey towards authentically understanding the people around them and embracing the lifestyle of the people who surround them. Introverted feeling is the function that is responsible for good and evil. This does not mean societal norms or getting along with others, but a personalized understanding of morality. INFPs are known to be the poetic archetype as they are prone to intense emotion that has no explanation other than passion and previous familiarity. They don't evaluate the world for how others react to it, but their own history. It's an incredibly individualistic perspective because it takes on the weight of morality on the individual. ISFPs do something similar, although without the same sense of being responsible for abstraction. Instead, they tend to be the artistic archetype, as their feelings about the world around them can become an incredibly profound abstract language through their interpretation. Often, they find themselves attached to certain kinds of curves, different colors, palettes, and atmospheres. Both ISFPs and INFPs collect resources from the world around them, and then they go through the process of defining what is good and avoiding what they consider evil. It is a powerful sense of judgment because it stems from the self, and poets from Shakespeare to Dante have used this function to paint moralities that the rest of us can perceive and celebrate. For INTJs and ISTJs, this function works as more of a blind spot that must be addressed. As they are incredibly focused, pragmatic types, they often get to a point where they forget to take care of themselves and to develop a relationship with themselves. This means that as they get older, it will be important for them to find art that they enjoy or places in nature that feel like home to them. Introverted feeling is the function of communicating with yourself in a way that's sensitive and understanding. Even for ESTJs and ENTJs, they will find themselves having to take time to nurture themselves as life progresses. There is no way to address introverted feeling without reckoning with the self and having an authentic connection to what could be considered the soul. Ultimately, introverted feeling and extroverted feeling fulfill similar roles, as they are usually the functions that end up motivating people, either through a desire for harmony or a sense of righteousness. But they are very different functions. This is why it's misleading to categorize all of the feeling archetypes in one group. An INFP and an ENFJ will have a very different sense of what makes emotions valid and what their worth is. Not all feeling comes from the same place. Some people honestly are affected by what others think. Others only consider themselves when processing their emotions. There is not a simple dichotomy between thinking and feeling, and there is more synergy between thinking and feeling than there is between the different types of feeling. It truly is almost a difference in language. Extroverted thinking pairs perfectly with introverted feeling, as it takes on the proofs that others have supplied and makes them concrete. In communication, extroverted thinking is a hyper-rational function, insisting on proofs and history to prove claims. It can work as a dictionary or as a science for the archetypes that make use of it as a function. The reason why it pairs so well with introverted feeling is that introverted feeling has massive blind spots. It is an incredibly sensitive and beautiful function, but ultimately it can become too self-involved. INFPs and ISFPs tend to run into a problem where they are not truly taking others into consideration, only their own feelings about the people and environments that surround them. Extroverted thinking works to balance this out as they mature. However, as they will start to understand that their feelings require proof and that their own passions aren't reason enough to act. ENTJs and ESTJs are powerhouse archetypes. They are the kind of people that drive philosophy in the case of the ENTJ, and society in the case of the ESTJ. Extroverted thinking could be argued to be the most useful function in terms of creating systems that work in the world. Not only are extroverted thinking leads incredibly at taking in new information, but they're also excellent at organizing that information into useful chunks that they can utilize in their lives. They're prone to throwing out information that doesn't immediately make sense, which might have them a bit closed-minded, but it also saves them an immeasurable amount of time. Extroverted thinking is the function of working together and getting humans motivated to be a part of a team and to share their knowledge to become the best that we can possibly be as a species. For the types that indirectly make use of this function, like extroverted feeling, it usually means something different. INTJs and ISTJs are also interested in public development and utility, but are often more motivated by their own interests and ideas. Both of them use extroverted thinking to communicate their ideas, but they're also more prone to go with their own hunches than the public consensus. If the public leads to where they want to go, then they'll be happy to reference them, but if not, they'll stay occupied with their own theories. For the ENFPs, ESFPs, INFPs, and ISFPs, extroverted thinking is usually underdeveloped to be used well, but is the language that they will force others to communicate with them in. All of these archetypes are prone to be caught up in their own emotionalism, communicating their own feelings about things while demanding that others communicate with well-explained reasoning. Understanding this can help you communicate with all of those types because you'll understand that your burden is to make sense, not to express yourself honestly. They're looking for how they feel about your thoughts, not to honestly interpret or consider them. Introverted thinking is the last function, and as the types of feelings are very different, the different types of thoughts are too. While extroverted thinking can be compared to science and the philosophy of Aristotle, introverted thinking is a much more personalized process. It can be found among engineers, philosophers such as both Plato and Socrates, who are considered an INFJ and an ENTP respectively. This function specializes in proof that the individual can supply. When Socrates went around Greece, he went to everyone who claimed to know something, and then asked them to explain what they knew. As they did so, he'd ask questions and ask the speakers to define the terms that they were using. This style of conversation got basically everyone to admit that they had no true understanding of what they were speaking on, and that they were just posturing to look impressive. Revealing this is why Socrates was executed. Introverted thinking is the function of focus and consideration. It tends to be obsessive and focused on true and false, just as introverted feeling is focused on good and evil. Often, introverted thought can dip into the realm of morality, but it's more common that it's motivated by observable reality than it is by passing judgment on others around the individual. Like introverted feeling, introverted thinking is meticulous, and it wants a perfect understanding of the subject material, not necessarily something that can be explained. Ironically, this results in INTPs, ENTPs, ISTPs, and ESTPs, who are better at talking about their feelings due to their tertiary or inferior extroverted feeling than they are at sharing their thoughts due to introverted thinking, being so difficult to translate into understandable language. A similar situation happens with ENFPs, INFPs, ESFPs, and ISFPs, where it's easier for them to talk about academic subjects or research due to their tertiary or inferior extroverted thinking, and the difficulty that comes from expressing introverted feelings directly. Still, just because a function can't be expressed doesn't mean a function is useless. Einstein relied on introverted thinking, and he was still able to be one of the most important figures in modern scientific history. He was also very talented at sharing his thoughts with others, both through his extroverted intuition sense of humor and his extroverted feeling sense of connection to humanity. All functions serve a purpose, even if their utility isn't as easily observed as some of the other functions. For the ISFJ and the INFJs, introverted thinking can become an incredibly potent function, as it pairs with their primary functions. Both introverted sensation and introverted intuition are deep, rich wells of information that can feed introverted thinking for days. If a healthy loop is formed, then ISFJs and INFJs can be some of the most logical archetypes within the feelers, able to both get along well with others and to pursue their own thoughts and interests. As for the ESFJs and ENFJs, they can benefit from introverted thinking just as INTPs and ISTPs can benefit from extroverted feeling. Both pairs of archetypes are built to accommodate and nurture their inferior function, especially if they are socially apt. Those are the 8 cognitive functions as discovered by Carl Jung. The shorthand for the functions is incredibly useful as it saves space, but it also allows patterns to be seen easier. The shorthand is the first letter of the type of the function capitalized, whether it is feeling or sensation, and the first letter of the direction of that function in lowercase, whether it is an introverted or extroverted function. Thus, extroverted thinking would be referred to as capital T lowercase e, as it is the thinking function with an extroverted direction. Introverted thinking would be written as capital T lowercase I, as it is the thinking function with an introverted direction. The rest of the functions work in the same system. So going in order of extroverted thinking, introverted thinking, extroverted feeling, extroverted intuition, extroverted sensation, and introverted sensation, the shorthand for the functions in that order is capital T lowercase e, capital T lowercase I, capital F lowercase e, capital F lowercase I, capital N lowercase e, capital N lowercase I, capital S lowercase e, capital S lowercase I. This system will make the archetypes easier to break down because it's much easier to memorize these functions than the theory behind typology. With an ENFJ, you know that their primary function is extroverted feeling, and you know that their secondary function is introverted intuition. With this, you can reveal their dominant function pairing, FE-NI. This gives you a better sense of how the archetype functions than the label ENFJ does. But it also reveals the rest of their functions. As NI is their auxiliary function, that means that SE must be the tertiary function, as the tertiary function is the opposite of the auxiliary. Given that you know the ENFJ is FE-NI-SE, it's easy to realize that the last function is introverted thinking, both because the inferior function must be the opposite of the primary function and because you have no other options left. This reveals the ENFJ to be FE-NI-SETI. You should be able to decode archetypes quickly once you have these principles down. The reason for this, it's much easier to see the patterns within the archetypes once they're spelled out. The ENFJs are FE-NI-SETI. The INFJs are NIFETISE. ISFJs are SIFETINE. And INTPs are TINESIFE. ESTJs are TESINEFI. And INTJs are NITEFISE. The patterns between these functions are much easier to observe than it is to memorize. That extroverted judgers and introverted judgers have opposite functions, but that extroverted judgers and introverted perceivers have the same sorts of order to their functions, although in different directions. Once you see the function spelled out for yourself, then this information will become second nature to you, and you won't need to memorize anything. You'll gain a feeling for how the types are structured and what each type has uniquely in common with other types, and the difference they have from the rest.